In Hebei, a small county that takes a while to find on the map, she peered through the car window at the bustling night market covered with dust and stains. The clamor of the crowd echoed far and wide. The streets were filled with the strong smell of opium husks emanating from the hot pot restaurants. The owner of the barbecue stand had an oily face, and the passers-by wrapped themselves tightly in their coats, braving through the thick smoke. Narrow, astringent, cold, and coarse. Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou are illusions of this country, while small counties like this are the reality. The woman had heard similar sentiments before, but never really understood it until now. This might be her last chance. She sighed and said, "This is the place, Uncle Bai, let's get off." The wind was strong in the north. The woman was wrapped in a large coat, hiding her body curves. Behind her was a man in his 30s, standing tall and straight with a neat flat-top haircut. They entered an old audio-video shop, one after the other. This dismal business is rare these days. The old television was somewhat damp, and young Dou-Wei was screaming on the greenish screen. The lyrics were filthy. Piles of martial arts novels were scattered everywhere, works of Liang Yusheng, Gu Long, and Ni Kuang. The warm-colored glass cabinet displayed a variety of records and videos from the late last century, along with some pixelated, even black and white, old photos. Teddy Robin, Sam Hui, and Alan Tam were gazing at each other with microphones in hand, next to the words, 1984 Space Travel Concert. Old-style posters were stuck on the wall, with the words Rouge Button written on them, and the picture of Anita Mui dressed as a man, her neck and eyebrows as light as smoke. "What can I get you?" The voice was clear and gentle, not like a rough northern man. Surprisingly, the owner of such a quaint store was a tall, thin young man, who seemed to be no more than 25 years old. He was wearing a black t-shirt and had a pale complexion. "Excuse me, are you Mr. Li Yan?" the woman asked with a smile. "Ah, yes, I am." The woman in the windbreaker had a high and straight nose, shallow eye sockets, and beautiful features, which made her look very heroic. Her whole demeanor exuded a sense of efficiency. Li Yan glanced subtly at the silent flat-top man behind the woman and replied, "I am a director of the Chinese Martial Arts Association and I come from Guangdong. My name is Lei Jing. Lei Hongsheng is my grandfather." The woman showed her white teeth. "According to seniority, I should call you senior brother." She shook hands with Li Yan. Her hand was warm and firm. Li Yan's eyes seemed to be covered with a thin layer of dust and only lit up when he heard the name Lei Hongsheng. "Oh, sit, sit. My place is small, please don't mind." The woman sat down gracefully on a chair nearby, quietly observing Li Yan. She still had pictures of her grandfather and this man from earlier times at home, but it was hard to associate the sharp and defiant young man in the pictures with the owner of this audio-video shop. "I often heard my grandfather mention you, senior brother. He always said that you have the highest talent he has ever seen." The man turned around to get the thermos, brewing tea while asking, "Is the old man still in good health?" The woman lowered her eyes. "He passed away before the new year." Li Yan's hand was steady, not a drop of water was spilled. He put down the thermos and gave the woman a deep look. "Is there anything I can help you with?" The woman pursed her lips and said, "I hope senior brother Li can come with me to Guangdong and serve as a consultant for the association." Li Yan raised his eyebrows and said, "You should have heard what kind of person I am. To be self-aware, in the martial arts world, the name Li Yan is infamous. How do you think I can help you?" Lei Jing was silent for a while, then smiled and said, "Rather than being infamous, it's more like being notorious. Maybe those people won't respect you, senior brother, but they will definitely fear you." Li Yan couldn't help but laugh at her words. "It sounds very reasonable. But you're too late." The man picked up the cup. "Lei Jing, you are an educated person, do you know what AML means?" Lei Jing was taken aback, and then a cloud of gloom surged in her heart. She tentatively said, "Acute myeloid leukemia." Li Yan took a sip of water. "I was diagnosed with this disease a month ago. Your grandfather knows that I have no family." He laughed, "So, I'm afraid I can't help you." The woman looked at her nails for a while before she dryly said, "The medical conditions in the south are much better than here, and I know some famous doctors abroad. Leukemia is not incurable. Even if you don't have siblings, it's entirely possible to find a matching bone marrow." The woman looked up, her demeanor much more stern. "Maybe my coming here has put you in a difficult position, senior brother, but," Lei Jing chose her words carefully, "the association is the culmination of my grandfather's life's work. I can't just watch it become a tool for some politicians to wield power or make a profit." "You say wielding power," Li Yan suddenly interrupted the woman's words. He picked up the hot water and drank it, smiling at the woman with an inexplicable wickedness. "Why isn't it wielding power if the association is handed over to you? Can you tell me, what's the difference between you and those politicians you despise?" Li Yan's words were very blunt, causing the flat-top man beside him to frown. The woman's face was calm. She just explained slowly, "The Chinese Martial Arts Association was founded by my grandfather. I have been involved in its affairs since I was 16. No one knows it better than I do, and no one loves it more than I do. Li Yan shook his head, put down his cup. When I shook hands with you just now, your hands were very soft. You haven't practiced martial arts, have you? The woman pursed her lips. I've been in poor health since I was a child, and the martial arts in my family are domineering. So, I only practiced some breathing exercises to regulate my breath. So. Li Yan lowered his head and suddenly changed the subject. Do you like to read martial arts novels, Miss Lei? Lei Jing was puzzled by the question and tried to answer. Jin Yong? Lao Shi, broken soul spear. The woman obviously didn't understand what Li Yan meant, but the flat-top man beside her squinted his eyes. Anyway, I don't have much energy left to help you with my disease. Thank you for your kindness. If you two want to stay for a meal, I have made dumplings. If not, please feel free. Also, please pay respects to the old man for me. At this point, there was obviously no need to continue the conversation. After a while, Lei Jing stood up silently but didn't leave immediately. Instead, she took out a business card under Li Yan's gaze and placed it on the table. She said, so many people have told me how domineering Li Yan is, they would never imagine what you are like now, senior brother. Li Yan tilted his head and didn't say a word. But my grandfather has always admired you, always. Do you know how he evaluated you? Lei Jing looked straight at the man, imitating her grandfather's tone. A martial artist should first harbor 3 points of evil in his heart. In my life, I have seen so many young people, and only this brat has exactly these 3 points of evil. No matter whether you agree to my request or not, senior brother, I sincerely hope that the 3 points of evil in your heart are still there. After saying that, Lei Jing turned around and left with the middle-aged man. Li Yan sat dumbfounded for a while, bent down to pick up the 2 cups of hot water and drank them. Then he chuckled, what a formidable girl. He took out a tissue and wiped his nose, not caring about the crimson stain on it, casually threw it aside. He laid down on the sofa. 3 points of evil, hee hee. Li Yan covered his forehead with his right hand, recalling the spirited old man with thick eyebrows, his smile tinged with bitterness. I'm sorry, old man, click. A pair of shiny black leather shoes stepped on the floor of his house. Li Yan recognized the owner of the shoes. It was the flat-top man who had been following Lei Jing. Is there anything else? Li Yan sat up and looked up, suddenly feeling a chill run down his spine. His chestnut-colored pupils contracted sharply. The door frame was being squeezed by the man's pale fingers, making a creaking sound. He was crouching like a beast, his face red and fleshy, slowly sagging down, sticking to the white tendons. His whole face was already in a state of decay. Upon hearing Li Yan's question, the man slowly raised his head, his bloodshot eyes protruding outwards, looking as ferocious as a demon. Li Yan slowly inhaled the cold air into his lungs, accompanied by the impassioned percussion music on the TV screen, was his short and forceful curse. Fuck. This is definitely not a human. As Li Yan thought, the terrifying creature suddenly lashed out with a whip-like leg. Like a bolt of black lightning, it struck towards Li Yan's temple. Li Yan instinctively reached out to block, but was blasted sideways by the immense force. Before Li Yan could get up, a domineering shadow descended upon him. Unable to dodge, he was kicked in the right shoulder, his entire arm instantly numb. Then, before his eyes, a shoe tip, with a gust of wind, ruthlessly aimed at his face. This barrage of kicks descended like a rainstorm, leaving him with no room for evasion. If the kick aimed at his face landed, Li Yan would either die or be crippled. Without thinking, Li Yan grabbed the man's flying leg, curled his body and silently jabbed his fingers into the man's knee joint. Snap! Thud! The man's right foot hit Li Yan's elbow, but he ended up kneeling on the ground. His face, a mess of flesh and blood, was right in front of Li Yan. In a split second, Li Yan, who had been passively beaten, reached out to grab the man's shoulder, leaned back, and the man's upper body uncontrollably fell forward. A ruthless look flashed in Li Yan's eyes. He rolled on the spot, grabbed the man's left wrist, pressed his right leg against the man's neck, and with a snap, the man's entire arm was brutally dislocated. Then, Li Yan pressed against the man's lower back, grabbed his other arm, and with a ruthless pull and twist, disregarding the teeth-gritting sound of bone breaking, he kicked the man's shin. The kick was both fierce and accurate, and the man's lower leg was kicked out of place, twisting outward in an irregular manner. Only then did he stand up, looking down from a high position at the man who was struggling on the ground. His gaze lingered on the man's rotting face for a long time, looking at the man who had been struggling for a long time but still couldn't get up. Li Yan let out a breath, turned around to get his phone. However, the man on the ground incredibly sprung up at this moment, biting at Li Yan's thigh in a way that completely defied joint movement, as if he had eyes on the back of his head. Li Yan spun around and kicked. His right foot, carrying the sound of wind, ruthlessly hit the man's temple. The man's neck was broken by this kick. His head, like a broken spring, twisted a full 90 degrees, hanging at a creepy angle on his neck. The scene was too gruesome to describe. Li Yan licked his gums and spat out a mouthful of blood. Scary bastard. His ferocious gaze swept over the man's body, the cold and bloody aura spewing freely. There was no trace of the mild-mannered audio store owner. Exciting, truly exciting. Tan's leg technique emphasizes continuity of momentum. Once it gains the upper hand, it's basically impossible for the opponent to turn the tide. I didn't expect it to be defeated by the fierce by Ma Fan Ti. It said that the Li family from Hejian is excellent in both spear and sword, but your grappling skills are also very sharp. He looked up to see a short, fat man standing in the doorway. The man was wearing a white vest, bell-bottom trousers, and slippers. His hair was greasy and sloppy. The 3 words, dead fat otaku, perfectly described him. There wasn't a single thing out of place, but Li Yan keenly noticed that behind the fat man was a pitch-black darkness. There was no moonlight outside the door, no neon lights, no barbecue smoke, no car roars, only a thick black, terrifyingly black. Where is the woman? Li Yan stared at the fat man in front of him. Your adaptability is very strong, your moves and reactions are all top-notch, very good. Feeling Li Yan's increasingly bad gaze, the fat man smiled and pointed to the ground. Li Yan glanced out of the corner of his eye, only to find that the man's body on the ground had disappeared. Only the fallen sofa and the mess could prove that everything had just happened. Was I dreaming? Li Yan touched his forehead. Maybe nothing had happened. He drank 3 cups of hot water and fell asleep on the sofa. There were no shoes, no man with flesh falling off his face, nothing. I have nothing to do with those 2 people. The only similarity is that we are all very interested in you. Don't worry, I just borrowed a thought from that flat-headed man to greet you, that's all. They know nothing about this. Li Yan didn't speak, waiting for the fat man to continue. Well, let's introduce myself. Hey, what's my name? The fat man reached into his pocket and turned out a bunch of things, such as crumpled vitamin wrappers, hair salon discount cards with naked women on them, used unidentified balls of tissue, etc. Finally, he found a dirty ID card. On it, the 3 big characters Wang X Yang were clearly written. Anyway, you can call me Wang Yang, but you can also call me another name. The fat man gave a strange smile. Taper. Li Yan glanced at him. He sneered. Demon, want some dumplings? Wang Yang was taken aback for a moment, then burst into laughter, and his laughter grew more and more hysterical. You're too funny. Ha ha ha. Li Yan squinted his eyes. He could swear to his great-great-grandfather that he really wanted to stamp his foot on this greasy fat man's face, if he could. I can save your life. The fat man suddenly stopped laughing. Li Yan stared at him and asked, do you have a bone marrow match for me? That's too easy. Wang Yang shook his head. I can give you something better. Li Yan let his hands hang down. He pondered for a while, until Wang Yang became somewhat impatient. What can I do for you? Wang Yang spread his hands. Just give it a try and you'll know. However, this is a road of no return. It sounds better than waiting to die. A cold light flashed in Li Yan's eyes. Come on, let's hear it. The fat man grinned, his face turning unusually dark and solemn. Well then, come. Behind him, a wave of abyss-like blackness surged out, swallowing the shocked Li Yan whole. At that moment, Li Yan felt as if he was falling, engulfed in darkness, with countless bizarre and incredible sights appearing before his eyes, black chains spanning the horizon, towering hulls cast from millions of pounds of green copper, golden-red rocks dancing in the sky. In the dark clouds, blue-purple thunder plasma was brewing, and in the hull, countless huge mysterious shadows were staring at him. The incredibly hot blood made Li Yan's vision turn red. And in the crimson curtain, he saw one of those huge, mysterious shadows, 18 wings of varying lengths, 9 heads that looked fierce and strange, 1 neck bleeding profusely. Wake her up, my walker. Who are you? Li Yan couldn't make a sound, he could only scream in his heart. Cold, dark. When Li Yan opened his eyes, he was greeted by a row of white fluorescent tubes. The surrounding noisy shouts and pungent smell of cigarettes gave him a slight headache. He sat up on the concrete floor and looked around. At this moment, Li Yan was sitting against the wall, facing a 5-meter square boxing ring. To his left, hundreds of seats, of varying heights, were filled with people. They were passionately shouting at the boxing ring, waving their white tickets in their hands, their eyes red with excitement. Is this underground boxing? Where's that fat guy? Li Yan muttered to himself. At this moment, in the midst of the chaotic environment, a hoarse and deep voice clearly entered Li Yan's ears. Welcome to Yanfu, Walker. We have prepared a new identity for you that won't arouse any suspicion. Please feel free to make a scene. Then, Li Yan clearly saw some black characters on the wall nearby, seemingly smoked out. Time, AD 1986. Location, Mongkok, 22.35 degrees north latitude, 113.5 degrees east longitude. Hong Kong's new territories to the north, Kowloon walled city, cramped, dirty, crowded, dark, drug trafficking, smuggling, killing, robbery. Casinos, brothels, opium dens, heroin dens, dog meat restaurants abound, the security is chaotic, and evil forces are rampant. This is the city of sin, the city of garbage, the city of violence, and the city of huge profits. The requirements for this Yenfu event are as follows. 1. Fight to the 7th level on the Kowloon boxing stage. Point 2. Obtain any fragment of the ancient novel, Hook Sinking Record. Point 3. Awaken the Guhuo bird in the ancient novel, Hook Sinking. When any one condition is met, the Yenfu event officially begins. You can stay for up to 1 month. Please note that if you lose the boxing match, you will return immediately regardless of the current progress of the Yenfu event. The gift of taper. Obtain additional purchase authority. 1/1. Your personal information is as follows: name, Li Yen status, fever, inflammation, bleeding, specialization, ancient martial arts. 81%. Li Yen stood up and stared at the line of specialization for a while, feeling that there was something more to it, but he couldn't figure it out at the moment that Li Yen was thinking about these things. A hand smelling of sweat and cheap cigarettes slapped him on the head. Slap. Li Yen caught the man's wrist and was about to exert force when he heard a string of curses in his ear. Standing here playing zombie? Damn shovel. Get on stage and fight. He glanced at the man, who was probably in his 40s, wearing an ill-fitting suit. His face was full of horizontal meat, his eyes the size of beans were wide open, a bit fierce, and a bit funny. Li Yen quickly lowered his head, let go of the man's wrist, and swept the wall with the corner of his eye. As expected, only the messy soot was left, and no words could be seen. The man was initially frightened by Li Yan's gaze, but seeing Li Yan lower his head, he quickly regained his arrogant demeanor, adjusted his suit, spat on the ground, and muttered, "Stupid. If he can really bring me to Hong Kong in 1986, then there's no reason he can't cure my illness." Li Yan silently walked towards the boxing ring, but his heart was trembling slightly. Next, please welcome our highest stakes contestant tonight. He's amazing, claiming to fight through all levels tonight, defeating all 6 boxers under the stage. The slick-haired, powdered-faced host on the stage shouted into the microphone in an exaggerated tone, trying to stir up the atmosphere. Li Yan didn't feel the slightest discomfort in this environment. The monster in the audiovisual store had aroused the long-lost belligerence in this man. He walked to the edge of the boxing ring, was about to go up, but was stopped by a security guard wearing black sunglasses. "That way." The man pointed to a few boxers standing under the stage. At this moment, the audience suddenly erupted into thunderous cheers. Li Yan looked up, and a tough-looking man with dark skin and crossed arms stepped onto the stage. "Chai! Chai! Chai!" Li Yan looked at the man on the stage called Chai with a smirk. He was wearing a tight vest, his body was muscular. His knees and elbows were covered with thick calluses. If feeling Li Yan's gaze, Chai turned his head and stared straight at Li Yan. Li Yan and Chai's gazes intersected for a moment, and then he walked towards the 5 boxers standing under the stage waiting to be selected by Chai, but he was secretly surprised that he saw a hint of obscure red light from this man, and it seemed that no one else had noticed it. What was more interesting was that when he looked at these boxers around him, he saw the same red light from them, only dimmer than Chai's. The host on the stage shrugged, and said in a deliberately relaxed tone, "I don't need to say how fierce Chai is. The gamblers who bet on him winning tonight will make a lot of money. Now, please let Chai choose the first boxer he will fight tonight." Chai's ferocious eyes were fixed on Li Yan until he walked into the position of the boxers, then he raised his hand to signal the host and pointed at Li Yan with his finger. There was a boo from the audience. This pale, tall and thin young man didn't look like a fighter at all. Some old gamblers on the boxing stage were even more certain. This man was a face they had never seen before. If he wasn't a hot-headed junior trying to make quick money, he was a student who had been forced onto the boxing stage because of heavy debts. The host took a look at the sheet in his hand and shouted loudly. "Chai has chosen the boxer Li Yan. Li Yan, get on stage." Li Yan moved his shoulders and neck, and climbed onto the stage. Chai revealed a cruel smile and made a throat-slitting gesture at the expressionless Li Yan. Li Yan stared at Chai, who was swaying from side to side, his body slightly leaning back, and took a stance of a pitching step. Some spectators in the audience whistled. "Young man, you can't win by pretending to be Bruce Lee. It's the first round, just pick an easy one to hit a few times, the later rounds will be exciting." Many people in the audience came to watch the match with the hope that Chai could win 6 rounds in a row, not to mention those gamblers who bet on Chai fighting through the rounds. This man named Chai was born in the southern Thai province of Trang, and his Thai boxing teacher was the Comet of the South, the boxing king Neff. He studied Thai boxing for 20 years and kicked down countless sour tangerine trees. Without enough strength and confidence, Chai would not dare to claim that he would fight through the levels on the Dragon City stage. Suddenly, Chai rushed over, a fierce and fast straight punch aimed straight at Li Yan's face. His left foot slightly stagnated, and the knee strike was ready to be launched. This is also a common attack routine in Thai boxing, using a straight punch as a feint, opening the game with a knee strike, and once an advantage is gained, it is a stormy elbow and knee strike. Li Yan took a step to the left, his left palm slightly curved to catch Chai's wrist, lifted it up, his right hand straight through Chai's right arm from the outside, hooked towards Chai's neck. This ghostly speed startled Chai. His knee hadn't even been lifted yet, but the opponent's palm was less than a foot away from his throat. He dodged to the left subconsciously, and Li Yan, who was in front of him, disappeared. Before he could recover, his knee pit seemed to be hit hard by a small hammer. Chai's lower body softened, and he knelt down on the spot, his sweat the size of beans falling down. Behind him was Li Yan, who was cold-faced and had just stood up. In the front row of the stands, a man with a gold chain around his neck and wearing a white suit tilted his head and muttered to himself, Zishu Guiguan? Bagua Palm. The man in the suit saw clearly that Li Yan had passed through Chai's armpit and kicked him hard on the knee. It was Zishu Guiguan in Bagua Palm. The audience below was in an uproar. What's going on? The Thai guy was knocked down in one face-off, and it was by an unfamiliar face that no one had ever seen before. Many people angrily threw their tickets onto the field. The crowd was excited. Everyone was questioning whether Chai was playing a fake match. Chai got up with a gloomy face, moved his right leg, and raised his fist at Li Yan. It's my turn. This time it was Li Yan's turn to rush over, his right straight punch hitting Chai's cheek. Chai carefully protected his face and solidly blocked the punch, but he didn't expect Li Yan's right leg to kick up, kicking towards Chai's crotch. That was exactly Chai's intention just now. Chai's eyes flashed with a fierce light. Li Yan's way of fighting was a great humiliation to him, although his knee pit still had a faint pain, but he didn't think about it. He just launched a knee strike. What Chai didn't notice was that his calf didn't lift up very high and his power was far from enough. When Li Yan's leg was still in the air, it straightened out at a strange angle and exploded with amazing speed, kicking viciously at the edge of Chai's knee. Kaba! The shouting of the crowd below the stage came to an abrupt halt. They clearly saw that Chai's knee joint was kicked and broken by Li Yan. The entire calf was at a weird angle. And Chai's body also lost its balance and fell to the ground. Li Yan touched his nose, where two streams of blood were flowing down. He glanced at the host with wide eyes and raised his chin. Announce it. The host looked at Chai on the ground in a daze, swallowed hard, and then stuttered, the winner of this boxing match, Li Yan. Chai, who had claimed to fight through the rounds, was knocked out in the first round, which was a surprise even for the most experienced gamblers. Li Yan on the boxing stage raised his hand without expression. Wasn't it about fighting through the rounds? Chai lost. Who's going to fight me next? The boxers below the stage exchanged glances. Li Yan knocked down the Thai guy, Chai, in their first encounter, which made no one willing to step on the stage at this moment. Ha ha ha, young man, the boxing arena in Longqing requires people to place bets before it starts. Just now, someone bet on Chai to win, that's why you had the chance to fight. If no one places a bet and fights with you, you can only step down. The speaker was the man in the white suit who had figured out Li Yan's routine. He had his pink shirt unbuttoned, revealing a corner of a yiksha tattoo. An unusual smile appeared on his pale face as he pulled out a thick stack of banknotes from his pocket. Those little guys are not your match. Do you have the guts to have a match with my guy? Win or lose, these $50,000 are yours. The arena in Kowloon Walled City has different levels. For example, Li Yan just fought at the 4th level, where the boxer can earn $5,000 for a win. The man in the gold-rimmed suit offered $50,000 right away, which Li Yan would have to win 10 matches to earn. In Hong Kong in 1986, a bowl of mixed noodles cost $10, and a pack of Marlboro cost $20. $50,000 was indeed a huge amount of money. Initially, Li Yan didn't care much about this 50,000 Hong Kong dollars. He could only stay here for a month, and whether he had the life to spend the money was another matter. But when his gaze fell on the $50,000, an unusual phrase caught his eye: Hong Kong dollar, 50,000. Valuable item, can be exchanged for 5 yen fu points. Such items must be confirmed to be in your possession before they can be exchanged. Note, even a single yen fu point is what you desire. At the beginning, a fat man with small eyes who was quite arrogant to Li Yan came over with a smile. Brother 9, Brother 9. The man in the white suit didn't even look at him, just stared at Li Yan on the stage. So, are you going to fight or not? Brother 9. The fat man was sweating profusely, but he had to pluck up the courage to smile and say. Brother 9 is in a good mood and wants to bet on boxing. You can pick any boxer here, and I'll immediately let this loser show you. But to let your guy on the stage, it's against the rules. Only then did Brother 9 turn his gaze to the fat man's greasy face, his tone unfriendly. Fat boy, are you an idiot? Let me spend $50,000 to watch the garbage of the 4th level fight? Do you take me, Flower Shirt 9, for a fool? Brother 9, how dare I? The fat man wanted to say something more, but was interrupted directly by Flower Shirt 9. You don't need to say any more. I'm just letting my guy go down and play. I've paid enough money. Which rule of the committee states that outsiders are not allowed on the stage? If the God of the Year blames me, I'll go apologize to him, okay? While I'm in a good mood, get lost. The fat man was in a dilemma. Around Flower Shirt 9, there were probably 40 or 50 gangsters with a rogue look on their faces, all staring at him unpleasantly. He glanced secretly at the staff member who was registering for the committee, saw him nodding, and then ran away in a sulk. Lucky you. He walked up to Li Yan with gritted teeth and muttered in a low voice. This guy is a rising star in the United Victory, a gangster. You fight well, then take a few punches and lie down on the ground, and you'll have $50,000. Got it? Li Yan blinked. A gangster, right? You better watch out and take care of yourself. Okay. Li Yan looked very relaxed, even though his status bar was marked with high fever, bleeding, and inflammation, all complications of leukemia. His physical condition was actually very poor. Not to mention the weakness, he would occasionally have unexplained gum bleeding or nosebleeds, and even once fainted during training, but Li Yan felt that this was the peak moment he had never had in the past few months. The punches to the flesh, the salty taste of blood tumbling between his lips and teeth, all these stirred up the anger in his heart. That strong feeling of being alive. Flower Shirt 9 grinned and patted the shoulder of a young man with freckles on his face next to him. Xiao Zhou, I know you can't wait. Go up to the boxing ring and play with this Bagua Palm master. Xiao Zhou was not tall, with a head of sharp short hair and a murderous look in his eyes. He stood up, didn't walk through the aisle, just jumped straight down from the stands and then climbed onto the boxing ring. Flower Shirt 9 looked at Xiao Zhou's indifferent face, shook his head with a smile. His little brother was originally from Shandong and also learned traditional martial arts. He was not the kind of person who learned some fancy moves for 3 or 5 years, but had been immersed in it for more than 10 years. He was qualified to open a martial arts hall and teach disciples in any martial arts hall in Hong Kong. He was a capable general of his own. Xiao Zhou had a contest with a Bagua Palm martial arts master in his early years and suffered a big loss. He was hit and broke 5 ribs and lost his hearing in his right ear. So for so many years, he has always hoped to have another match with a successor of Bagua Palm to avenge his hatred. But Bagua Palm is mostly passed down in Beijing and Tianjin, and Bagua Palm martial arts halls are rare in Hong Kong and in Kowloon walled city. Flower Shirt 9 did know a Bagua Palm successor who was authentic and orthodox, but even if he lent him 10 times the courage, Flower Shirt 9 would not dare to let that person practice with his brother. Standing on the boxing ring, Xiao Zhou bowed his hand, not like a gangster in a gang, but rather like an old-school martial artist. Du's boxing, Zhou Weidao, please. Li Yan glanced at him. Hajin, Li Yan. Xiao Zhou slightly frowned, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He stepped forward, his elbow jabbing straight at Li Yan's chest. Li Yan gently retreated half a step, avoiding most of Xiao Zhou's elbow's momentum. His left arm went from bottom to top to guide Xiao Zhou's elbow, and his right foot kicked at Xiao Zhou's shin. But when Li Yan touched Xiao Zhou's elbow, he felt that the other party's strength was released and received immediately, which was strange to him. Interesting. A gleam of light burst into Xiao Zhou's eyes, his body made a spinning step to avoid Li Yan's foot, and his left fist hammered towards Li Yan's temple like a sledgehammer. Li Yan narrowed his eyes and retreated instead of advancing. His foot made a diagonal step and crashed into Xiao Zhou's arms. His right hand formed a claw and grabbed Xiao Zhou's 60-degree fist wrist, intending to break Xiao Zhou's wrist. Du's boxing originated from Old Hong boxing, which is good at grappling and elbowing. Now Li Yan is using grappling to deal with himself. Xiao Zhou immediately sneered that he didn't care about Li Yan grabbing his left hand. He crouched down and stretched out his claw towards Li Yan's crotch. Li Yan reacted very quickly, his knee went up to meet him. He repelled Xiao Zhou's palm and at the same time exerted force on his right hand, trying to twist Xiao Zhou's left hand, who knew that a very strange force came from his hand. Li Yan couldn't twist Xiao Zhou at all, and Xiao Zhou's fist was already bombarding Li Yan's chin. High hand. At this moment, Li Yan finally realized that this little gangster he met on the underground black boxing ring in Kowloon walled city turned out to be a high hand who fully grasped the essence of Du's boxing. He let go of Xiao Zhou's wrist and retreated quickly. Flower Shirt 9 leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the boxing ring, and only relaxed his clenched fists when he saw Li Yan retreat first. Xiao Zhou on the stage coldly stared at Li Yan and slowly said, "You are very arrogant." Li Yan squinted and smiled. "I just didn't expect that a small gangster in a gang would actually be a high hand of Du's boxing. It's a pity that the true successor of the Wenqing boxing is lost." This seemed to touch Xiao Zhou's sore spot. He spat out a mouthful of saliva and sneered at Li Yan. "You, a murderer who smuggled into Longqing from the mainland, what qualifications do you have to say that I am lost?" If Dong Haichuan knew that he had such a disciple, he would probably jump out of the coffin to clean up the house. Li Yan didn't care about Xiao Zhou's sarcasm at all. He smiled and said, "Then I'm going to get serious. I can't wait." As soon as Xiao Zhou's voice fell, Li Yan, who was at least 5 steps away from him, suddenly flew in front of him in an instant. That pale and cold face was pressing straight towards his eyes, like a ghost. Just at this moment, a clear voice came over. It's rare that Brother Nine comes to our Longqing to watch the Kung Fu competition. But I didn't hear that the red stick of the United Victory followed our Longqing horsemen. As soon as these words came out, they immediately attracted the attention of everyone on and off the stage. There were about 30 people coming from outside the hall, wearing black suits, with unpleasant faces, and each with a pistol at their waist. Seeing this, Flower Shirt Nine's face quickly darkened. As the speaker entered the room, the crowd on both sides receded like a tide. He was a young man in his 20s, clad in a leather jacket, tall and lanky with a baby face, looking as fresh as a student still in school. Floral Shirt Nine leaned back in his seat, speaking loudly, "Red Ghost, you scared me. What's going on? Has old Ghost Wu fallen out with us and become so domineering that even people from Lianqing are driven away from watching the boxing matches in Dragon City?" The young man known as Red Ghost sat next to Floral Shirt Nine, lit a cigarette, and mumbled, "The grudge between Lianqing and Mr. Wu has nothing to do with us, who make a living from the boxing ring. We are with the Tai Sui. But you treat my boxing ring as a chicken farm, coming and going as you please. Isn't that breaking our rules? Are you suggesting that anyone who comes to watch a boxing match can just get on the stage? How can we then charge for betting on boxing, don't you think?" Floral Shirt Nine scoffed and pointed at Li Yan on the boxing stage. "I'll be straight with you. My little Zhou has been wanting to spar with a master of Bagua Palm for a long time, and you must have heard of it. It's not me, Floral Shirt Nine, making trouble. I'm afraid that once I leave here, your people won't even agree to meet me. After all, old Ghost Wu and Tai Sui both work on the Dragon City Committee. We see each other often, and you don't want to provoke me. I get it. I don't want to break Dragon City's rules, I just want my guy to have a match with your boxer. If you can't even agree to this, then it's clear that you're just messing with me." Red Ghost crossed his arms and slowly shook his head. "Rules are rules. I can't interfere with anything else, but today, if your man gets on the stage, it's causing trouble in Dragon City." Floral Shirt Nine laughed in exasperation. "Well then, there's no more room for negotiation, Brother Nine." Little Zhou jumped off the ring, stopping Floral Shirt Nine, and then spoke to Red Ghost. "You just said that I've been following the horsemen of Dragon City. Does that mean, as long as I follow the rules and fight in the ring, I can spar with him?" Red Ghost lowered his eyelids. "Then you should start from the first ring, and if the committee determines that your performances are comparable and someone is willing to bet heavily, of course there's no problem." "Alright, then I'll start from the bottom of the Dragon City ring." Red Ghost nodded and looked at Floral Shirt Nine with an indifferent face. "What does Brother Nine say?" Floral Shirt Nine's face was frighteningly dark and he remained silent. Little Zhou walked up to Floral Shirt Nine, swallowing nervously. "Brother Nine." Floral Shirt Nine glanced at him sidelong. When did the boss not care for his horse? Little Zhou gave an embarrassed smile. "Brother Nine, I can handle this." Floral Shirt Nine muttered something under his breath, probably cursing. "Let's go." Floral Shirt Nine got up from his seat, and nearly 50 people got up and headed towards the exit. A few young thugs even gave a provocative look to Red Ghost, who remained seated calmly, but Red Ghost simply ignored them. Before leaving, Little Zhou went up to Li Yan. "Master Li, there aren't many traditional martial artists in the boxing ring of Kowloon Walled City, and today was not satisfactory. Once I establish myself in the boxing ring of Dragon City, let's have a proper match." Li Yan nodded and opened his mouth to speak. "I say, Master Zhou, does the $50,000 that your Brother Nine mentioned still count?" Little Zhou was taken aback for a moment, and after a while, he nodded with a strange expression on his face. "It counts. You have gained 5 Yenfu points. You have unlocked an additional purchase privilege, 0/1, in this Yenfu event. Your purchase quota is as follows: 1. A glimpse category, skill scroll quality, common. It can obtain personal information from others, with a certain chance to identify their weaknesses. You can use this skill directly, consuming 1 Yenfu point each time you obtain information from others. Alternatively, you can choose to spend 10 Yenfu points to purchase this skill. Once purchased, you can use this skill at will point 2. ES Hematopoietic Cell Enhancer category, consumables quality, fine origin, Grand Clock Research Institute. It has a strong therapeutic effect on blood and hematopoietic cell diseases, and can also enhance the vitality of the user's blood. Ordinary people using it have a very small chance of learning the skill. Blood activation, the taper's message. Although it can't cure your disease, it won't let you fight with an injured body. You can spend 10 Yenfu points to get it. Point 3. ES Hematopoietic Cell Supplement category, consumables quality, rare origin, Grand Clock Research Institute. It has a very strong therapeutic effect on blood and cell diseases, and can also enhance the vitality of the user's blood. Healthy people will learn the skill. Blood activation. After taking it, you can spend 300 Yenfu points to get it. Please note that the additional purchase privilege given to you by the taper can be activated once in each Yenfu event. After 3 Yenfu events, the gift will disappear. The taper's message: newcomer, I think I'm very generous. Upon reading this information, Li Yan suddenly had a moment of clarity. ES Hematopoietic Cell Supplement, this was what the fat man had promised. something that could cure his disease, and what he needed to do was to get enough Yenfu points. At this point, Li Yan began to seriously consider what it meant to secure the ownership. After all, this determined how Li Yan would make money. After all, there were too many ways to make quick money in this world. Li Yan sat in the corner, pretending to be in a trance, while calculating in his heart. A figure approached him, looking down at him. It was Red Ghost. You're called Li Yan, right? How long have you been in Hong Kong? Li Yan looked up, pretending to rub his eyes. Just recently. The young man known as Red Ghost squatted down. You follow me from now on, boxing under me. Money, women, I won't treat you badly, understand? Li Yan nodded coldly. Red Ghost laughed. Come with me. Saying this, he turned and walked upstairs. Li Yan followed silently, taking a good look at the seemingly friendly young man known as Red Ghost. Even Li Yan himself didn't notice that after staring at Red Ghost for not too long, a ripple of black color appeared in his pupils. You have gained some information. It costs 1 Yenfu point to view it. Do you want to view it? Li Yan pondered for a while, but eventually chose not to view Red Ghost's information. Instead, he followed Red Ghost up the stairs. The two men ascended to the rooftop, one after the other. The concrete rooftop was cluttered with chaotic antennas, leaving no room for footing. As far as the eye could see, there were buildings huddled together, haphazardly stacked high. They were shabby, run down, and crowded. But also busy, spectacular, and filled with the vitality of life. Kowloon Walled City, it scares people to death when others mention it, but it's not bad here. I'll take you to eat dog meat hot pot when you're free. I guarantee you'll swallow your tongue. Red Ghost said. Dragon City is famous for being a lawless area, no one cares about it. Malaysia, Macau, Taiwan, every year countless fugitives flee here when they have nowhere else to go. Either they work for a triad, or most of them end up on Dragon City's boxing ring, just like you. He paused, then went on. 90% of the prostitutes in Hong Kong come from here, half of the people in Kowloon Walled City have taken drugs, arms smuggling, human trafficking, casinos, brothels, a myriad of evils. Liansheng, 14K, Hong Yan, triads are everywhere. He held up a finger. But in Dragon City, no one dares to make trouble if the committee doesn't allow it. When the committee speaks, no triad dares to say no. Here, even the governor of Hong Kong is not as powerful as the committee, you get it? Red Ghost didn't expect Li Yan to answer and continued speaking. You're boxing in Dragon City, making a living with Tai Sui. Tai Sui is the executive member of the Dragon City Executive Committee. All the boxing ring businesses in Dragon City, big and small, are backed by Tai Sui. I heard about your situation from Fatty Bo. You were particularly fierce today, you knocked out Cha Kai with just 2 moves. Even Fatty Bo said he misjudged you. I fell ill when I first came to Hong Kong, and I've only recently recovered. Red Ghost nodded, not pressing for more details. He lit a cigarette and said, Tai Sui appreciates young men with sharp fists the most, you have a future. Li Yan stared at the cramped and dilapidated buildings in front of him, seemingly asking casually. Red Ghost brother, they say I'm fighting in the 4th ring, how much money can I make in the higher rings? Red Ghost sniffed. For the 4th ring, the venue is small, usually only workers from Dragon City and workshop owners who have finished work will watch. You can get $5,000 for winning a match, and $1,000 for losing. The first 5 rings are open every day, as long as someone is willing to buy you a match, you can make money. The 6th ring is not open every day, there are not many boxers, about 3 or 4 times a week, boxers can get $30,000 for winning, and $5,000 for losing. There are a lot of varieties, if there's a water pipe willing to add money, cage fights, weapon fights, anything goes, you can make tens of thousands in one night. But often, there are fatalities. Red Ghost spoke lightly, but Li Yan could imagine, in the ring, 2 people holding sharp weapons, gambling with their lives, blood all over the floor, while the people in the stands roared more and more crazily. Thinking about this, a chill flashed in the corner of Li Yan's eyes. Splat! His shoe stepped into the sewage, splashing up a large wave of murky water. A rat, not much smaller than a cat, was scared and scurried past Li Yan. The air was filled with the rotten smell emanating from the fishball processing factory behind this building. No matter how legendary the Kowloon Walled City, this slum, appeared in the eyes of people in later generations, dirt and decay were its true colors. The glitz and glamour within the city were inaccessible to Li Yan at the moment. Li Yan's thumb was wrapped around a string of keys, belonging to a room in the apartment building in front of him with its mottled walls. The keys were given by Red Ghost as a welcome gift, so he wouldn't have to squeeze into a room with lower-level fighters. This place was only 15 minutes away from the Kowloon Arena on Longjing Road, which was convenient for Li Yan. Fighters in the Dragon City needed to find a suitable manager, also known as a Dragon City groom. When and how the fighters went on stage was arranged by the manager. Before, Li Yan's manager in Dragon City was a small-eyed fat man named Fat Bo. Now, his manager was naturally Red Ghost compared to Fat Bo, who could only show off at the fourth stage. Red Ghost was a famous figure in the whole Dragon City arena. He started boxing at the age of 13 under the name of Chen Minhong, and became the master of the sixth stage at the age of 21. He was fierce and heavy-handed, which was how he got his nickname, Red Ghost. After retiring, he started working for Tai Sui and became one of the most trusted managers by Tai Sui's side. Even the chairman of the committee, Wu Haoshi, would greet Red Ghost with a smile when he saw him. It was a big celebration for people like Fat Bo to fight under Red Ghost, but at this moment, Li Yan, who had skyrocketed in Fat Bo's eyes, was rummaging through his pocket for a few dollars in change, looking upset, without any hint of self-satisfaction. 300 yen floating points, that's a total of 3 million Hong Kong dollars, should I rob a bank? Although the taper gave Li Yan the time of 3 yen floating events to raise these 300 yen floating points, Li Yan obviously couldn't wait that long. He wanted to get it all at once. In the Kowloon walled city in 1986, he wanted to earn 3 million Hong Kong dollars within a month. Meow. Li Yan looked down to see a ginger kitten pacing back and forth at his feet, occasionally bumping its nose against his leg. Ah me. A childish girl's voice came from the stairs. Li Yan looked up to see a 13 or 14-year-old girl on the stairs. She was wearing a washed-out white shirt, barefoot, soft and weak, looking a bit shy. Meow. The kitten, hearing its owner's call, jumped up to the girl in a few leaps, purring in its throat. Sorry, sir, Ami always likes to run around. Li Yan smiled, your cat is very cute. He walked into the apartment, looking for the room number Red Ghost had told him. Little girl, do you know where room 413 is? The little girl nodded, picked up her cat, and gestured for Li Yan to follow her. After about a minute or two, the little girl stopped and pointed to the number on the room next to her. Here it is. Thank you, little girl. Here, let me give you some candy. Li Yan pulled out 2 milk candies from his pocket and handed them to the little girl. He had bought the candy on Longjin Road to alleviate his pain. Ah Xiao, who are you talking to so late? A woman's voice, a bit hoarse and clearly lacking energy, came from the room across from Li Yan. Nothing, Mom, I went downstairs to find Ami. Seeing the candy in Li Yan's hand, the girl hesitated for a moment. Hearing the voice from the room, she hurriedly said goodbye to Li Yan and went back to her room. Li Yan unwrapped the candy wrapper, stuffed a piece of milk candy into his mouth, and didn't think much of it, taking out his key to open his room door. Having a mother and daughter across the door was better than having some troublemaker. At least for now, Li Yan didn't want any trouble. The room was small but clean. But the strong fishy smell from the fishball factory behind the apartment was too strong, and could be smelled even with the doors and windows closed. Li Yan just needed a place to stay, so he didn't mind. He just tidied up a bit and fell asleep, late at night, in a gambling den. Open. 12 points, big. As the dice stopped rolling, the middle-aged man in a disheveled suit with a receding hairline slumped to the ground, still reeking of alcohol. Some of the people gathered around the gambling table were exultant, some were gnashing their teeth, but no one looked at him, as if this man, looking as if he was about to have a heart attack, was just a pile of trash to be swept onto the street. Come on, place your bets. The dice roller, black-toothed tie, had messy hair and yellow teeth biting half a cigarette, was shouting with a red face. Wait, I'm still betting small this round. The middle-aged man with red eyes screamed hoarsely. Bring the money, old man. Black-toothed tie swallowed a mouthful of phlegm, shouting at the middle-aged man in a cocky tone. He had sharp eyes and naturally saw that the middle-aged man had no money left. If he dared to say something provocative like betting with his fingers, Black-toothed tie would have him dragged to the back, stripped naked, and thrown into the sea to feed the sharks. The middle-aged man's lips were trembling as he took out a flat wooden box from his bosom. How much is this worth? When the wooden box was opened, there was a light yellow rice paper inside. The paper was embossed with gold patterns, depicting a lifelike Kuei ox with golden hair visible all over its body, standing on one foot on the ground, sitting and howling at the sky. The back of the paper was filled with tiny characters. Without a second thought, Black-toothed tie slapped the wooden box and the rice paper inside onto the middle-aged man's face. Fuck you, bringing a box of toilet paper here to exchange for money? Do you need hell money? If you don't have money, get lost. The middle-aged man staggered back, with 2 streams of blood flowing from his nose to the ground. He got up and walked out, grumbling all the way. You don't know what's good, it's an antique. He dusted himself off and stumbled out, not realizing that walking drunk on the narrow streets of Kowloon City was the most conspicuous. Brat, talking nonsense. He was still complaining, but didn't notice a figure approaching him from behind. Taking advantage of his distraction, a cement block in his hand hit him hard on the back of the head. The middle-aged man fell to the ground, and the man crouched down and frantically searched his pockets, but found nothing. Just when he was frustrated, he caught a glimpse of the impressive gold-embossed rice paper in the man's hand. Without thinking, he snatched it, looked around to see that no one was around, and turned to leave. At that moment, a hand suddenly grabbed his pant leg, tripping him to the ground. The middle-aged man was covered in blood, moaning in pain. "Help, help!" The man was trembling all over, desperately trying to kick the middle-aged man's chest to make him let go, but the middle-aged man's hand was tightly clenched and wouldn't let go. He gasped for breath, anger rising from his heart, reaching for the blood-stained cement block he had just thrown on the ground, raising it high with both hands. With a heavy smash. Bang! Li Yan's palm came down hard, hitting his opponent's face and knocking him out instantly. This young man is sharp, he's won 5 matches in a row tonight. What the hell, this guy is clearly not at the 4th level, why is he still fighting? Red Ghost leaned against the edge of the boxing ring, waving his hand to signal Li Yan to come down. "What's up, Red Ghost bro?" Li Yan asked half-jokingly. Red Ghost gave a wry smile. "If you keep fighting like this, even an idiot would blindly follow you, making me lose money on my ring. Come with me, your last match tonight is in the big ring." "Alright. Where to?" Red Ghost threw his cigarette butt on the ground. Fui Building. The Fucky building mentioned by Red Ghost was also on Lungcam Road, an imposing dark green skyscraper. While taking the elevator, Red Ghost casually said to Li Yan. "People who come to the Fucky building to watch boxing matches are either rich or noble. They spend at least a few million in one night. The boxers here get a cut. If you want to establish yourself here, you have to find a big sponsor to back you up. I'll handle that part, just don't say anything wrong." The elevator quickly came to a stop. As the elevator doors opened, Li Yan couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. The entire building from the 10th floor upwards had been opened up, creating a space that was about 30 meters high, with 4 viewing stands. 16 tasseled lanterns hung high, and the wooden escalators were covered with red carpet. In the middle, the marble ring was surrounded by white jade pillars, antique in style. There were female attendants in black tailcoats serving drinks to the guests. 0.42-meter-high screens faced the stands, ensuring that guests could see the boxers on the ring from any angle. Like it? The scene is grand enough, right? You're out of luck today, otherwise, there would be bunny girls to see. Red Ghost joked with Li Yan as a female attendant in a black tailcoat hurried over. "Red Ghost, Mrs. Deng is demanding to see you." Red Ghost rubbed his face and said to Li Yan. "A big sponsor is here." Saying that, he led Li Yan up the escalator and into a private box. Actually, Li Yan didn't quite understand why women would be attracted to the bloody scene of a boxing ring. All he could say was that the world was full of wonders. 2 people entered a small private box. As soon as the door opened, they saw glass shards all over the floor, colorful lights spinning around, and unfamiliar brands of foreign liquor and snacks on the coffee table. A woman in her 30s was sitting lazily on the sofa, her hair in big waves, long legs and slim waist, charming phoenix eyes, deep dimples on her face, and the corners of her mouth always unconsciously curled up, giving this woman a bit of fierceness. "Why aren't you letting Ahong come? He's not at Fucky. Has he gone outside Lung City for soup?" "Judy, Red Ghost really went out." The female attendant in the black tailcoat looked embarrassed. Someone next to her was cleaning up the broken bottles on the floor. "Talking nonsense, I'm back, aren't I?" Red Ghost, who had just stepped through the door, immediately spoke up. "Everyone get out." The black tailcoat attendants looked relieved. Li Yan's eyes wandered between the woman and Red Ghost. He also wanted to leave, but was glared at by Red Ghost. "Judy, why are you so angry? You'll get wrinkles." Red Ghost sat next to Judy, took 2 glasses of wine, and spoke sincerely to the woman. The woman took the glass, raised her chin, and said discontentedly, "You finally show up. I haven't seen you all night. What are you doing? Do you know I'm in Lung City and deliberately avoid me?" "Of course not. I went to look after the new blood." Red Ghost sounded innocent, which, combined with his student-like face, was indeed quite lethal to women. "Ah Yan, come here." Li Yan reluctantly walked over and squeezed out a smile. "Judy." Judy looked Li Yan up and down. His cheeks were thin, his cheekbones prominent, and his chin was outlined with a beautiful groove. His eyebrows were slightly raised, his eyes steady. Judy took a sip of the golden liquid in her glass, making her lips even more red and attractive. "He's quite handsome, I wonder if he can hold up. I like handsome men, but if they go up to the stage and get knocked down in 1 or 2 rounds, it's embarrassing for me. The last boxer I supported lost, and he Changhong made fun of me." As she spoke, her eyes suddenly lit up. "Why don't you fight, Ahong? No matter how much you charge, I'll support you." "Sure." Red Ghost nodded and drained his glass. "But we should give new people a chance. So, if Ah Yen loses, I'll go down and clean up Higongzi for Judy." Judy revealed a sweet smile. "That's settled then." She turned to Li Yan. "Little brother, you have to last." Li Yan lowered his head and smiled faintly. "Judy, you're joking." Red Ghost is my boss. It's embarrassing to make my own boss fight. I'd rather jump into the sea. The woman laughed so hard that she swayed. Oh, if you can hold on, I will definitely spoil you. Li Yan's temples twitched slightly, but his face was filled with a smile, showing no signs of discomfort. Don't say I don't take care of you. Judy is a big sponsor of the Lung City Ring. Her dead husband was a Taiping gentleman in his lifetime, and she herself is worth over 10 billion. She spends 7 or 800,000 on drinks every night. If you cling to her fragrant thigh, you'll definitely rise to the top. Li Yan rubbed his face like Red Ghost did at the beginning, and asked with a grin, so what do you want me to do? Red Ghost patted Li Yan's shoulder. If you win this match today, you'll have established yourself at the 6th ring. Show your mettle. I, Red Ghost, haven't taken in new blood in a long time, don't make me lose face. I can show my mettle, but not my coquettishness. As long as you don't make me sell my sex appeal, I'll even fight a tiger for you to see. Red Ghost's face broke into a shallow dimple. Get on the stage. Li Yan was the first to step onto the stage, glancing at the gamblers who were occasionally raising their hands to place bets, and finally cast his eyes on Judy behind the glass wall of the box. This woman was holding a wine glass, revealing a section of her fair wrist, and raised her eyebrows at Li Yan on the stage. She's worth 10 billion, 3 million is just a drop in the bucket. With the increasingly enthusiastic cheers, Li Yan turned his head and looked at his final opponent of the day. A man in his 30s, with a sallow face, walked onto the stage. He was wearing a black practice suit, his expression cold. This man's name was Nan Juji, a fugitive wanted by the Japanese government. He had raped and murdered 7 young women in Hokkaido. His last victim was only 14 years old and was brutally dismembered by him. What Nan Juji didn't expect was that the girl was the only daughter of the vice chairman of the Inagawakai. As a result, he was hunted down by the Inagawakai. Having nowhere to go, he fled to Lung City. To put it bluntly, this man would die a terrible death even if he took one step out of Lung City. Nan Juji was proficient in firearms and daggers, and also had a set of skilled Okinawan Goju-ryu karate skills. Before Li Yan, he had already won 3 matches tonight. The lightest injury of his 3 opponents was having both arm bones dislocated and kidneys ruptured, and passed out in the ring. As the white towel hit the ground, Li Yan almost immediately charged forward, his right hand flashing out like lightning, smashing into Nan Juji's blocking elbow, his left palm sweeping towards Nan Juji's neck. His temper was outrageously violent. Everyone was surprised that this newcomer dared to reach out to Nan Juji, but Red Ghost focused his gaze on Li Yan's left foot, which had quietly moved half a step forward. Nan Juji twisted his waist, his back of the fist hit Li Yan's sweeping arm, his right hand straightened out, reaching for Li Yan's upper arm. The moment his palm touched Li Yan's shoulder, a smile appeared at the corner of Nan Juji's mouth. He didn't expect this tall and thin young man to be so weak. But his hands didn't stop, his 4 fingers exerted force, and his thumb, like a hook, ruthlessly dug into Li Yan's shoulder blade. Seeing Nan Juji grab Li Yan's shoulder, the stands immediately let out a heavy sigh. In the previous 3 matches, no matter how the situation had been, once Nan Juji got close and grabbed the opponent's shoulder, and showed his joint technique, the opponent almost had no chance to turn the table. Unexpectedly, Li Yan, who was under control, suddenly raised his right leg, using his previously half-stepped left foot as a pivot. His right foot shot up like a soaring dragon. The tip of his shoe fiercely kicked Nan Juji's chin, causing Nan Juji's neck to jerk back, and a mouthful of blood sprayed into the air. His right hand also weakly let go. Li Yan, seizing the opportunity, rushed forward, grabbing the wrist of Nan Juji, who was leaning backward. A fierce light flashed in the corner of his eye. The Goju-ryu originates from the southern Shaolin white crane style. Today, I'll let you pay your respects to your ancestors. Goju-ryu karate, though not as world-renowned as Kyokushin karate because of Majitatsu Oyama, it is still one of the more notable and practical schools within karate. And indeed, it does originate from southern traditional martial arts. The founder of Goju-ryu, Chojin Miyagi, was a student of the renowned karate master Kanryo Higaonna, who in turn was a disciple of the famous Fujian master Xie Zongxiang, who was known as Ho-Ru-Si. Miyagi himself also went to China to study boxing. Both of their techniques are inherited from the White Crane Gate of southern Shaolin. Even the name Goju-ryu comes from the phrase Fa Gang Ro Tun Tu, in a famous Ming Dynasty military book. The fact that modern people are eager to learn Goju-ryu while denouncing traditional martial arts as flowery boxing is quite ironic. The reasons are very complex and difficult to explain in a few words. Although Li Yan comes from a northern martial arts family, he has spent a full 7 years in Guangdong. With a solid foundation and high talent, his understanding of southern martial arts is no less than that of his peers who are southern boxers. When he said that he would show Nanzhou the kung fu of the White Crane Gate, it was not an empty talk. Li Yan's fingers turned into claws, hooking Nanzhou's wrist and turning it outward. His left hand's 3 fingers were closed together like a bird's beak, and he jabbed it into his armpit like an iron awl. Nanzhou, too, was a veteran of many battles. Although he was at a great disadvantage, he reacted very quickly. At this moment, he did not attempt to increase the distance, but rather, bearing the pain in his right arm as if it had been jabbed with a steel nail, he lunged into Li Yan's arms, his right hand wrapped around Li Yan's waist like a steel whip, and he tried to bite Li Yan's ear in a street fight. If they lacked experience in close combat, even veteran martial artists who were technically superior to Li Yan might easily have their situation turned around by such a beast-like tear and bite. Unfortunately, Li Yan, who was only 25 years old, had a combat experience that was jaw-dropping. He had the nickname of Hejian Thin Tiger. These 4 words were written with blood by Li Yan's fists and kicks. The moment Nanzhou's arm touched Li Yan's waist, Li Yan's right elbow had already brutally hit Nanzhou's face, making a dull thud, blood mixed with sweat splashed out, and 2 broken teeth spun in the air and flew out of the ring. Nanzhou was stunned by the head-on elbow strike, and Li Yan's hands, like arrows, slammed hard into his opponent. The audience under the ring clearly saw that only Nanzhou's heels were touching the ground. His whole body seemed to have been broken in half, like a shattered doll, under the onslaught of Li Yan's fists, the double insert arrow of the crane fist. Single chop fight. Left and right chop palm, double snake spit letter. Tug hammer. Crane top. All of these were poured onto Nanzhou's body. Large patches of blood seeped through, and the fierce punches almost shattered Nanzhou. Silk, the gamblers were dumbfounded, their throats seemed to be choked, and their wide eyes stared unblinkingly at the body of Nanzhou, which was quickly soaked in blood. They were completely oblivious to the cigars in their mouths that were about to burn out. It took 3 full breaths for Nanzhou to finally fall to the ground with a thud. Large patches of blood soaked through, and waves of bloody foam spurted out from his mouth and nose. After a while, he stopped convulsing, the entire room fell silent. Li Yan straightened up, and blood dripped from his fingers onto the ring. He shook his fist and looked back at the stands. At this moment, the fucky building erupted into deafening screams and cheers. Power! That's satisfying. I bet $1 million for this kid to come down, I'm sure of him. Handsome, another weapon fight. Li Yan looked around at the audience in the stands, a hint of crazed bloodiness flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly concealed. The Red Devil nodded in satisfaction. Well done. The small box had darkened, and no one could see what was going on inside. Under the psychedelic lights were enticing and continuous panting sounds. The image of Li Yan on the LCD screen had blood dripping from both hands, his eyes were defiant, his smooth muscle lines contained amazing explosive power, and were also soaked in the scent of male hormones. The panting went from low to increasingly rapid, and finally ended with a satisfied sigh. A delicate hand groped for something in the dark, knocked over a high glass and didn't realize it. After a while, it found an open bottle of champagne. Judy's face was flushed, her sleek collarbone was drenched with sweat. She picked up the bottle and drizzled it over herself. It took a long time for her to recover from the afterglow. She turned over, propped herself up on her arm and looked at Li Yan on the screen. Her charming face was full of changing expressions, and the corners of her mouth curled up. What's the big deal that requires Mr. Li to take action? The executive committee member of Kowloon Walled City and the commander of the Dragon City security team, Si Lijing, brewed a cup of tea and handed it to an old man with half-white hair and a serious demeanor. Li Yaoguang, the total detective of the Hong Kong police force, has the reputation of being a white-haired detective. Mr. C, I'll be frank, I need to mobilize the Flying Tigers to handle a case in Dragon City. Si Lijing shrugged. When did the Hong Kong police have to report to the committee to handle a case? It's up to Mr. Li. He took a sip of tea, a glint in his eye. But to mobilize the Flying Tigers, someone tried to assassinate the governor? Mr. Li placed 4 photos on Si Lijing's desk. Who are they? Si Lijing asked casually. Big Circle Boys. Si Lijing's brow furrowed, as if he had been scalded by the tea. This leader is called Adong, he has a criminal record. The other 3 are his fellow villagers. 4 days ago, they robbed more than 4.6 million Hong Kong dollars and jewelry worth about 20 million from the Fongbao Bank, as well as a batch of antiques. They killed 5 security personnel during the process. These people are accurate with their guns and bold, making them difficult to deal with. When the police force rounded them up, one of them was shot. Although most of the property was recovered in the end, the whereabouts of the antiques are unknown. We have sealed off Tseung Kwan O and Kun Tong. We have checked all the hospitals in Hong Kong and have not found their whereabouts. With that, Mr. Li took out another photo, which showed a middle-aged man with a receding hairline. This man is the bank manager of Fongbao Bank. He has been fired by Fongbao. We have always suspected that he colluded with the Big Circle Boys, or even simply that the Big Circle Boys were brought in by him. However, last night, his body was found in Kowloon Walled City. He was killed by repeated blows to the head with a blunt object, and the clues were broken. The old man tapped the table. This case is now shocking the whole of Hong Kong. The only place in Hong Kong where private clinics would be willing to accept them is Kowloon Walled City. Plus, the bank manager died here, so I hope the committee can help us find their whereabouts. Si Lijing didn't hesitate for long, weighed his options, and then replied with absolute certainty. 3 days. As long as these people really are in Dragon City, I will find them within 3 days. Mr. Li's always furrowed brow relaxed slightly. Then I'll have to trouble Mr. C. These people are desperate and capable of anything. If you find them, don't startle them, leave it to the police to handle. Police and civilian cooperation. Si Lijing smiled. By the way, what kind of antiques did they rob? I'll ask someone to check for clues. Mr. Li handed over a list of antiques. Si Lijing scanned it, and the first line read, Master Lin Yutong's treasured copy of the ancient novel Go Chen Lu.